Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the show of Development Dialogue Show. Today, inshallah, we'll be discussing about various issues, including Sustainable Development Goal, because it's talk of the town, latest talk of the town, a very ambitious plan, 194 states jointly going to agree how to end poverty once for all within the next 15 years. I'm surprised that if humanity hasn't been able to achieve this so far, but next 15 years is a historic move. Let's see how it goes. We will discuss these issues with two of our best colleagues. One colleague, Ulrich Nitschke, he works for the federal government of Ministry of Development Cooperation in the German government, head of programs, and Felipe Queipo from the United Nations Department of Public Information. Most welcome to the show. Before I go further, first of all, if I can ask Ulrich, if you can tell us about your organization that you are looking at within the German government. What do you do? I mean, what your department does?
GIZ is the maybe third or fourth biggest development and implementing agency and around the world. It's a merger out of different technical corporations since 2 or 3 years. And we were commissioned by the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, to also look into the issues of the role of religion and values in development, which sounds silly that we didn't come to this idea some years ago, but if you look into the developmental world, you will look into 92 as one of the milestones, the Agenda 21, development environment in one, big thing where all the 190 leaders around the world said, okay, it's environment and development. But then you look into Agenda 21 and you find 10 chapters on very specific stakeholders, women, youth, municipalities, farmers, what have you. What you don't find? Religions, which is amazing. While we recognize that 8 out of 10 people in our partner countries define themselves by a religious belief, by a religious conviction, by a religious orientation. And so after 20 years, we say, okay, it's about time to reach out to that world and ask them what's their vision on sustainable development. And I believe that we are in a very unique moment, that we can get new partnerships with a new quality. These, what we call FPOs, religiously inspired groups,
faith-based
organizations can really make a difference, because only techniques will not solve the issue of poverty. Only money will not solve the issue. Even if we get maybe 20 million, 100 million out of the poverty line, what is a decent life for them? It will depend also on their beliefs and what they're heading to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, your passion is very clear. I think you, as if you work for a mission, rather than you are a bureaucrat. You are not.
I hope I'm not. I'm a trained theologian. Maybe that this kind of preaching comes along now. But
Philip, about yourself. Tell me about yourself and your background and what you are doing in New York, in UN headquarters.
I belong to the NGO Relations and Advocacy section within the Department of Public Information. I work mainly with entities, nonprofit organizations that have the mission to promote the work and mission of the United Nations and support us in that endeavor to be able to implement the objectives, not only the MDGs and the SDGs, the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, but mainly the UN Charter, the Constitution for Humanity that we established so that we can move forward in a very positive way. And we specifically also work with faith-based organizations in a very unique way, in that we have, as I said, part of our work is engaging with the community, and we have a focus on faith series where we can see the contribution of religion and religious institutions and interfaith dialogue to the mission of the UN.
Excellent, very ambitious. Wow.
Right.
So UN at last wake up, or it has been waking up. You were in deep slumber for a long time.
And I think it's for some good reasons. I think we have to address the issues also that concern our public services. I mean, we spend taxpayer money in the end of the day. And let's face it, religion in our overall world perception is perceived as either backward driven, not sustainable, standing for very traditional ways that are maybe not sustainable. Gender biases, we have like serious concerns. I mean, let alone what ISIS does to the world, you know. I mean, abusing Islam for chopping off heads. I mean, where are we? So I do believe that if we want to develop the potentiality, what I call unique selling point of the FPOs in cooperation for development goals, then we have to talk very seriously what are the principles of cooperation. You know, we have to talk transparency, we have to talk accountability. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying that FPOs don't have it, but we have very strict, clear rules and regulations of implementing development goals. And I think as my organization, what I usually call needs to learn religious literacy.
Religious literacy is very
important.
Very important.
You know, what are the 5 pillars of Islam? Just not that you can quote them, but you respect what is behind it. That's a different approach, and not think that techniques will solve it. And on the other side, with the FPOs, somewhat I would then call developmental literacy, in terms of how do we implement, how do we, you know, not to reinvent the wheel, not to perform the same mistakes we did. So I think that's a big challenge on both sides, to learn from each other, listen to each other, and then come to a different term of development.
Different, yeah. I think, Philip, one of the problem that most faith-based organizations face, and we being a large Muslim development agency, work with thousands of small little Muslim entities, including mosques, they do not have the language and the vocabulary, and the terms of references are quite different, unique. So when you are opening the door for NGO relations, I mean, number of millions of mosques, there are in fact civil society organizations, they are NGOs. Many mosques carry out humanitarian work. As we speak, our volunteers are in Europe trying to help out the refugees stranded in Greece and Hungary and so on. But one thing I must just remember, Angela Marcos, I mean, she is really an angel, and I think she has got such a courage and guts. But I'm saying that our people, our volunteers of Al-Khair Foundation is currently working with the church-based volunteers, mosque-based volunteers across the road there. So I think there is always a role for the faith-based organizations. But what is missing is, while you have to develop religious literacy, for the faith-based organization to understand institutional literacies, because they do not know, they do not communicate. Yeah. And who is going to do that job?
Well, our department, our office mainly, it tries to find a common language that we all understand. The language of understanding, of tolerance, of principle of supporting each other, and also moving forward, as I said before, with the objective of making this life a better situation for everyone, as many people as possible. Our mission within the NGO Relations section at DPI, the Department of Public Information, is to introduce the NGO community to the UN system and explain how to navigate the system. We have an orientation program for newly associated NGOs, in which we introduce for 2 days the different sections of the UN, from security to legal affairs to the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. And we let the NGO community know this is how the UN speaks, and this is a specific language, and this is how the UN works, and this is how you can contribute. And we have been very successful, for example, in introducing a project for youth. We have the Youth-led program, which is a youth initiative that DPI created within the NGO community to facilitate the interaction between youth leaders and youth representatives of the NGO community at the UN system. Recently, a few months ago, some of those youth representatives were part of a meeting of the Security Council, where they explored the problem of fundamentalism and how youth has the capacity to prevent that issue, and what does youth have to say about the whole problem that we find in the misunderstanding of faith and the misunderstanding of faith-based organizations and the work that they do?
But Philip, this training that you were talking about, it can take place in New York. Only a very limited number of organizations can attend. But do you have any plan to sort of introduce training the trainers, which can cascade it down, say, from Europe, in Asia and Africa and so on?
We do. DPI is a very large department within the United Nations system, and DPI has 63 different regional offices. We call them information centers, and we collaborate with them on a very regular basis. In fact, DPI would not exist without the support of our satellite offices around the world. So when we had to coordinate efforts for dissemination of information or publications or even engagement with civil society, we rely heavily on those offices. If we do not have a presence, again, there's 193 countries at the UN and only 63 offices, then we engage with other partners of the UN, like the resident coordinators of the United Nations Development Program, which are great partners with us, and any other entity, UNICEF for children, UN Women. We collaborate. The UN is a very inclusive institution, and although there's bureaucracy, like in any other large governmental institution, there's a great means of communication. Our mission is to facilitate the work of civil society and help civil society understand what the mission of the UN is, and engage with civil society so that they can, we can partner to again, move ahead with the vision of we have a common purpose, which is the betterment of humanity. Let's do it together.
Excellent. Ulrich, I just want to ask you, why does the world need sustainable development goals, and what are they?
I usually say it's, I'm not now numbering all the 17 goals.
No.
You know, what I feel is like, if we go back to this milestones like Agenda 21, where sustainability as a concept was accepted on a very mutual understanding between civil society, citizens, leadership. You go then to the Millennium Development Goals, which now closed in 2015. The Sustainable Development Goals, what is the new thing in that? It's on 5 dimensions. It's people, prosperity, planet, peace, and partnership. And I think these 5 dimensions are sort of cross-cutting throughout these 17 goals and the 167 indicators behind them. 169, you count better than me. You know, but this is not what it's all about, because that sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of measurement, a lot of consultancies running around measuring things. I think what is unique is, first of all, they for all of us. We have to overcome, and I call it paradigm shift. We have to overcome the thinking of, okay, the farmers do that, women have to do that, youth here, municipalities there, governments there, business here. That's history. The new challenge is that we all come together around this common goal of ending poverty, getting peace on the ground, preserving what the planet gives us, what the Pope calls Mother Earth. You know, the understanding that we are co-creators and not longer dominating the earth, exploiting the earth. I mean, these common insights, and then it comes back to world religions, because all these world religions share these common goods, an understanding of common values. And this is, I think, what we have to facilitate, that it's not just on indicators. It's not on pure technical solutions. We need them as well. We need good techniques to be implemented. That's why we also need business. But we need a common understanding and sense, and let me call it spirituality, to change the world.
Absolutely. But you see, Philip, what Ulrich is suggesting, that coordinated effort by all players, bringing the civil society, bankers, businesses, youth, women, farmers, and so on and so forth, has your colleagues in the UN understand the processes and the magnanimity of the problem, of the issues?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the MDGs and the SDGs are a UN-led initiative with member states, and it's a huge partnership. But we have understood that the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, need to be more inclusive with regards to participation by civil society. In fact, my department specifically, we have a yearly conference at the UN for NGOs, and last year, in 2014, took place in New York. It gathered around 2,400 participants from the NGO community from all over the world, in which we discuss the transition from the MDGs towards the SDGs and how civil society has to contribute to this dialogue. I would say member states are important, they're key because of the implementation, but key actors are also the grassroots level individuals and the organizations in civil society that are coordinating the work at a very specific, with very specific targets and very specific objectives. So that coordination is the one that my department tries to help with, which is inform and communicate. And again, our contribution in 2011, the conference we had in Bonn, Germany, with our partners in UNV, United Nations Volunteers, was to explore the concepts of sustainability, volunteerism, and the final declaration of the 3-day conference with 1,700 participants in Germany from all over the world again. That final declaration of the conference was the basis document for the Rio Plus 20 declaration. So the contribution of civil society has always been very important. The UN understands that, has always understood that, because from the inception of the UN, 1945, civil society has always been present. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has been a huge success on the part of civil society for pushing towards having something tangible where they can demand and explore and explain to the world, this is what we need and this is what we have. It has been translated into 444 languages at the UN. 444 languages, the Universal Declaration is the document that has been translated into most documents at the UN, because the main issue of DPI is we need to inform the world of the rights that they have, and they need to know it, as many people as possible. They belong to them. They should not have to demand their human rights. They should be awarded to them just by virtue of being humans. And DPI has that mission of informing the world and communicating.
I think, Felipe, what a contrast if you look at what's happening in Myanmar. The people are running away to save their lives on the ocean unprotected, and the people running away in European shores. Yeah. I mean, how the contrast of the aspirations and what is happening on the ground, what such a big gap. I don't know how the world community will respond to it. I mean, if you see the European leadership, with the exception of Angela Merkel, other European leaders' commitment seems to be not as forthcoming as her. And she demonstrated a level of leadership which requires, I think, in order to get the sustainable development goals to be achieved, we need developed nations leadership to be as bold, as firm, as committed in order to achieve that.
This is, if I may come in here, because I do believe that there we have a slight problem. We have a Security Council who discusses like sanctions against countries where we fear that there is military, whatever action, atomic weaponing, what have you. We don't have a Security Council on the Sustainable Development Goals. We are missing something in our UN system, and it can only be the bilaterals who are pushing for different levels, you know. In case we sign Paris, and we all then agree on the two degree target, you know. In case, I mean, the SDGs will be signed, I don't think there's any doubt. But what kind of mechanisms do we establish along the way to hold governments, to hold civil society, to hold business accountable to what we sign? I mean, there is still a huge gap, and that's a governance issue. It's not an issue of political will, it's a governance issue.
And that's why my question about the processes, the magnanimity of the processes, in order to uphold what you are saying, is, I don't know whether it has been properly thought through. The process to hold it together, it is something. But anyway, time will answer.
Time will show.
Just another angle that I need to raise is that I'm very delighted to know that the senior most spiritual leader, the Pope, is going to address the UN General Assembly. It is a very, very refreshing, very reassuring that a faith leader, the first time in the history of United Nations, 70 years in place, that somebody is going to go and speak. And we are very delighted. I think, is it the process that began, that other spiritual leaders will come and address the General Assembly? Or what is the intention? Do you have any inside knowledge?
Even by being a Catholic theologian, I don't know what the Pope will say. I believe that he made already a very distinctive, I mean, I go to my own organization, I go to my own commissioning ministry, and I tell them Pope Francis is one of the biggest legitimacy sources for our work. And I, as being a Catholic theologian, I was never able in the last 25 years to say that. That makes me proud, I have to say, first of all. If other religions come along, stand up, and put the same, value-driven approach, peoples-driven approach into implementing the SDGs, I just can hope. But I think with Laudato Si, he made already a very clear statement. It's a theological shift. People don't talk about it, but it is really happening. All liberation theologians, they knew that it's Mother Earth, we are co-creators. And that has implications, because that makes us, all of us, despite the fact where we come from, to also co-responsible co-creators. So we are responsible what we are doing. It sounds very normal. For churchy structures, traditional theologians, it's not. It's like we dominate, we instruct, it's a different language. And I believe that if one of the biggest religious movements, like the Catholic Church, can put this stand clear and say, this is a new understanding of co-creation and responsibility about, I call it normally responsibility, shared responsibility for the outcomes, not just for the process, for the outcomes, that we share responsibility on that. That should generate the respect we need to implement.
And I think on the same spirit, the Islamic angle is the responsibility as a Khalifa, as a vicegerent of earth.
There you go.
That it is you are responsible to ensure the protection for the defense of the earth, for the growth of the earth, and so on. So I think this is a beginning. And what is your comment of the popes coming in a secular institutions, lukewarm to welcome faith?
I think that the message that our Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, has sent to the religious community worldwide is that he's welcoming input from everyone. He had a meeting in Washington where he promised to have a high-level meeting. There will be a high-level meeting in the future soon with high representatives or leaders of the different faith traditions around the world. He already had a meeting in conjunction with the President of the General Assembly in April 22nd and 23rd, if I'm not mistaken, where we could hear the input from civil society, faith-based groups. What is that they expect from the UN, and how can they contribute, and how can they be more engaged? So engagement from faith or religious traditions or faith organizations is pretty active right now and is a reality at the United Nations, and it's getting there. Like anything, is moving along and is moving forward. The UN is an institution that has also its history, and we are learning how to engage better with different entities. But from the beginning, the UN is with the people, is open to everyone, including the sociocultural aspect of religion in society.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Ulrich, for coming and talking to ICRA. And you have spoken to the young people of the ICRA audience, and I am sure they will benefit enormously from your wisdom. Dear brothers and sisters, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I look forward to seeing you the next show, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.